welcome to this episode of My Life on the Hills. A great little show this month. The sun's out. Well, first off, we're going to head down into the paddock and I'm going to cut some thistles by hand and give you an idea of why I'm doing it with my lovely little guest. We're going to head down to the pond and look at thistles in a lovely setting and look at some of the fabulous shenanigans that's going on around the pond at the moment. Then we're going to head back up and I'm going to show you what I've been doing with something very similar to this big old log in my hand. Let's go. Okay, you'll notice that I've got a little companion again today. So Lily's come out to play and she's quite hell-bent on trying to remove her little hat which is shading her head. It's the first day of sunshine for so long. It's wonderful. And really it's an opportunity for me to come down and take some of these creeping thistles out of the paddock. You know, a couple of years ago we tend to get the field topped, you know. It costs 25 quid to get the field topped. Which, you know, may not be a lot of money to many of you watching this, but for me 25 quid is 25 quid, and if I've got Lily then it's something that I can do with her on my back. She enjoys coming out to play, and really with a hook I can take out this creeping thistle from 2.5 acres in you know, just a few hours. The idea being that when you cut them and it rains again, those stems fill up with water and then rot out, and it tends to keep them down. The other way, of course, the way of controlling creeping thistle organically is you have a kind of mechanism you can stick under the base of the thistle and flip them out, but that involves too much bending over with Lily on my back. So it's a bit of hook action today. They are pretty, and we'll go and see some of these down by the pond in a bit and see all the kind of the inverts that they attract. But really with creeping thistle it's very much a case of everything in its place. So let's do some hacking. Just feel this for grazing really, you know. We've got Sarah's horse on here and we've got our sheep on here as well. So I don't really want these creeping thistles compromising the quality of the grazing. I mean, when Liv casts the camera across this field, you'll see there's a lot of white in here at the moment, and it's wonderful to see the bumblebees pollinating all that wonderful white clover, because all that herbage is so important for the stock. And especially the new lambs that are growing wonderfully quickly this year because the vegetation is so lush because of all the rain that we've had. But these things, you know, creeping thistles aren't the best thing to have in a grazing field any more than they are in your lawn, you know. I mean, there are drifts of creeping thistles at the back of the house. There are drifts of creeping thistles at the back of the pond. And it's true to say that these flowering heads do provide wonderful platforms for mating soldier beetles, and they're very rich in forage for all sorts of inverts. But of course, when they do come out, when they throw their seed heads, you'll have a breath of wind later on in late summer, and there'll be massive clouds of thistle seed drifting across the pasture. So it's best to take them out before they do that. And I do leave some creeping thistles in various places, and certainly finches, goldfinches adore thistle seed, so it's worth leaving them for that. But yeah, just a question of being sensible really, I think. So what I will do, I think I'll go and show you exactly where a drift of creeping thistle is going to cause untold hellishness to the rest of the surrounding land. So this is a fine example of a sward of creeping thistle, if there is such a thing as a sward of creeping thistle. But these are inundated with soldier beetles. In fact, you know, there are all sorts of little orgies going on their various platforms. But to put it into context of where these are situated and why I allow them to sort of proliferate in this space, is the prevailing wind come from that direction. So they'll blow across here, and the pond is here. So essentially any seed that come off these thistles pretty much end up along the side of the hedge and in the pond. The pond itself is looking absolutely fabulous. There's all sorts of interesting things going on there. Liv was just filming the whirligig beetles doing their thing, shimmering around the top of the pond as the sunlight hits their cuticles. It just glints. Wonderful things. There are spiders' webs catching some of the hapless common blue damselflies that we've got on the pond. And for the first time today, I've seen a southern hawker quartering the pond. Really, it's probably recently hatched. The nymph has probably clambered its way up one of these reed maces and emerged, and it's now looking after its territory. There's some flat-bodied chasers, which are a wonderful looking dragonfly, especially when they're at rest, because you can see their thorax kind of deflate and inflate. It's fabulous to see. And it is, you know, this is the time of year when the sun comes out. There's all sorts of astonishing things going on. But I'll tell you what, you know, you wouldn't want to be in that pond. It's definitely a dog-eat-dog world, that's a sure fact. What's great about this filming, this little catalogue, this series that we're compiling, is that I can draw your attention to the changes that have occurred on that living roof and the realities of what it was like this time last year compared to what it's like now. Just going to deposit my little travelling companion before we do some landscaping up in the garden, some economical landscaping in fact. So this is almost a goodbye from little Lily, I think. Come on, babe. So something that I was inspired to do today was just to, you know, show you, give you an idea of a very simple way of putting in edgings, a very simple and a very inexpensive way, and a very sort of aesthetically pleasing way. And in fact, it's an edging. A wooden edging is an edging that changes. So you look down through this little tract. Originally these were oak poles that I put in here, and as they deteriorated, obviously you've got a whole load of invert life that's colonised them, you know, burrowing beetle larvae and so on, and fabulous bracket fungus that develops towards the end of the growing season. So they are, you know, ever-changing features in themselves. So I thought what I'd do today is just quickly put this edging in, just to show you exactly the transformation between well, something that's deteriorated and a rather messy gravel tract into something that's very easy on the eye. Well, I've cleared a nice little tract now on the edgings of these stones, so I'm going to head back down in front of the garage and I'm going to peel one of the chestnut posts that we're going to put in here. It's very satisfying, so let me show you how it's done. This little beauty is a draw knife, and I had this made up, in fact, a couple of months ago. It's something that I use fairly often. Interestingly, chestnut posts, whether you put them in the ground or lay them on top of the ground, they do tend to last a lot longer without their bark, and interestingly they look a lot nicer. You know, you've got this flecked finish, which you'll see in a minute after I put them. So this was made for me by a local guy, lives a couple of miles up the road, blacksmith guy Dan Wistons, and it's you know, it's a little piece of art really, absolutely beautiful bit of steel, and carefully crafted handles that fit beautifully. And this, unless I lose it and leave it behind in the woods or something, will almost certainly last me a lifetime, and in fact probably several generations after me. So I'll show you how this peeling is done. Very, very simple, but very rewarding equally. So that's it, finished article. So what I'm going to do is take it up there now and hopefully lay it down into that channel. There might be a little bit of chainsaw work just to make it slimmer in certain places, and possibly there's a slight kink in the path there, so it might be that I have to chop this in two with the saw. But let's go and take it up there and have a look. Okay, so now those two are in, I'm going to pack out the edges, a little bit of sharp sand, just to stop those sets from sort of moving slightly across to these two. And then I'm going to backfill them, and jobs are good. And you'll be able to see the contrast then between the nice new shiny edgings and then the deteriorating edges that will need replacing, especially now that I've done this. I think you'll agree it's a very simple and effective way of putting an edging in place. Very inexpensive as well. So while I sweep the rest of this up, just to make the job as neat as it can be, I'll invite you to look at the difference between the new set that's gone in and the old piece of oak that's probably been there for 6 or 7 years, something like that. I'm hoping the chestnut will last slightly longer. Well, that's it for this month. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of My Life on the Hill as much as I've enjoyed making it. The sun is out, it's been beautiful. I'm going to love the rest of this evening, and the weekend is supposed to be fabulous. So I'll see you next time.